I gave these animals their food just now, but they're all the way in the back. I don't know if y'all see them back there, but they all the way over there. They're chewing on some grass. And so, I figure, well, when they get hungry, they'll come up here and they'll eat some food, right? And so, but that's good. I want to see them eating grass. Grass is, grass is, it's practically free, right? For me to grow grass, a substantial amount of grass, and my whole thing about growing grass is that, when it comes to growing grass, I like to graze it to the ground, right? I talk about this. It's one of the things that I do. If I have a bunch of grass on the field and then I need to plow it into the field, then that's money that I could have made, right? It's not if I have grass on the field, I don't want to leave it on the field, because if I leave it on the field, if the animals had ate it, I would have made money. And so, and if you graze the grass down to the ground and the weather conditions are pretty good, granted that you don't like graze it down to the dirt, all right? You don't want to be in a situation where you're sitting on a dirt patch and then just hoping that your grass comes back. Because if you're sitting on a dirt patch hoping that your grass comes back, it's not going to come back. You're going to have to replant it. You're going to have to replant it, and then you're also probably going to have to fertilize it. All right, if you're sitting on a patch of dirt, or if you're sitting on a field of brush, you're going to have to work that field to make it grow grass. All right, that dirt is not magically, oh my God, maybe if it rains and oh man, maybe if I keep my fingers crossed and I hope and and then the grass is going to grow. That's not how it works. All right, if you're sitting on a patch of dirt, if you're sitting on a field of brush, you are going to have to work that field to make it grow grass. All right, you're sitting around and go, oh my God, maybe if it rains and maybe if I give it some time, maybe it'll just magically start growing grass. Even if it does grow grass, that grass is not going to be very good. The feed values of the grass are going to be very low. Your animals are not going to condition on it properly, and after they graze it, it will probably not grow back. Right? I talk about grass in terms of like if you want to get a deeper understanding of what grass is. Grass is effectively, and I talk about this all the time, right? The same calcium that is in the soil is the same calcium that is in your bones. It's the same exact thing. More or less it's the same thing. All right, the way that grass grows is that there's grass, the roots of the grass accumulate all of these different minerals, and then there's a specific cell inside of the grass, inside of plant material. If you take a look at plant material is green. And the reason it is green is because there is a cell inside of the plant called the chloroplast. And chloroplast, when sunlight goes through the chloroplast, it actually creates its own sugar. And so when you have these various minerals that the plant has accumulated via its root system from the soil in the ground, it is also obtaining carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, right? Carbon dioxide as a gas. Plants actually, effectively inhale carbon dioxide through microscopic pores on the bottom of their leaves. These leaves effectively exchange water for carbon dioxide. And so as they accumulate carbon dioxide and they accumulate these different minerals, then you introduce sugar to the plant, which the plant is making by itself because of the chloroplast cell interacting with sunlight. Now you have energy, and that energy effectively creates a massive chain reaction, and then the plant grows. So plants are effectively just a massive collection of minerals and etc. etc. And the thing is that when you have something like an animal, or even a human being, or whatever, when you pull that plant material off of the ground and you ingest it, you are actually digesting those minerals, you're digesting the sugar, etc., etc. They are becoming a part of your existence, right? Your physical structure. Same thing with the cow. And so as you pull these minerals off of the field, the minerals of the field begin to decline. The amount of minerals that are available in your soil profile begin to drop. And as that happens, you actually need to replenish those minerals, or the grass will stop to grow. It will not grow anymore. There are no minerals left in the field. You have stripped your field of minerals. Now there are no minerals in your field. Now now you need to replenish those minerals, right? That's the whole idea of fertilizing a field. All right, that's why. And I talk about this all the time, and I'm taking a look at growing my grass. Here in about a week, maybe about 2 weeks tops, I'm gonna take a look at the weather, and if the weather stays over 35 consistently for a very long period of time, and it looks like I'm gonna get some rain, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna fertilize my grass. And right now, what I'm taking a look at is I'll probably end up doing a 10-2-6-1-1 NPK calcium sulfur. I'll probably end up. That's probably the fertilizer ratio that I'll use. I'll end up using a 10-2-6-1-1 NPK calcium sulfur, and then I'll apply that fertilizer on my field, at a dosage rate of about 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre. And because here's the thing about fertilizing the field in the spring, is in the spring, the weather conditions are almost ideal for growing grass. You can effectively grow grass, like you're not going to have to worry about it getting too hot until maybe about June, the end of June. And so the grass is effectively going to grow from now very well. It's going to provide the grass is effectively, you could anticipate that at some point in time there's going to be a good bit of a time span where you actually can accumulate biomass for the grass at relatively optimal rates. You can effectively maximize the biomass accumulation of the grass, for natural weather conditions. For natural weather conditions, you can maximize the accumulation of biomass. And so, you get more opportunities to fertilize in the spring. Because here's the thing about fertilizing, like at the end of summer, is like, if you fertilize at the end of summer, and if some last year was a very good example of this. The summer went on for very long. It was hot for very long, and then the winter, the summer was it was very hot for very long, and then I didn't get like any rain at all for like 3 months. I did not get any rain, even when it was cooling down. I did not get any rain for like 3 months. And so, I don't really have that many, windows of opportunity to fertilize in those weather conditions, right? And when I did fertilize, it's like I grew grass for a month and then it got cold. And then the grass was not accumulating biomass at an optimal rate. Even if I fertilized it, the grass would respond to the fertilizer, but it would not, be growing at optimal rates. And so, I've been supplementing their feed with hay, distiller grains, and then when I ran out of grass altogether, I actually switched them over to a total mixed ration. Right, that's what happened. Right, I was supplementing their feed. I was supplementing their grass intake with hay and distiller grains and corn. And then when I completely ran out of grass, I switched them over to a total mixed ration. Right, and so but when the grass is coming in, and I take a look at the overall conditions, and I would say, when I take a look at my overall conditions, I would actually anticipate that the biomass accumulation of my field is going to be pretty substantial for like the next 3 or 4 months. I don't really have to worry about it getting cold and the grass going hibernation, and then having to come out of hibernation a week later, 2 weeks later, and then start reaccumulating. I don't have to worry about that stuff. It's effectively going to grow until it dies. In the spring, actually, that's a very good way to put it. I've always talked about, a grass. When you take a look at a plant, what you have is a plant that will begin to grow. That plant will begin to grow. It will enter what is called a vegetative state. Eventually, it will develop flowering, and anatomy. Right? That grass will effectively, ultimately begin to develop a flower. And once that flower has produced a seed, the grass will then begin to die. That's actually a very good way to put it. The grass in the spring, and from the beginning of spring until about the early summer, the grass will effectively have gone from growing to death by itself. That's actually a very good way to put it. So I don't have to worry about, oh, well, is the grass going to enter vegetation and then it's going to go into hibernation, and then the cattle are going to eat it, and then, when the grass starts growing back in, if I over fertilize it, then the cattle are going to have a diet that is too high in energy and protein, and then now I got bloating problems, and now the animals may be developing, acidosis, and I don't have to worry about that stuff. Oh, maybe I should put them on hay and some distiller grains and some corn to supplement their feed so that they don't have acidosis. I don't have to worry about that stuff. All right, the grass is effectively going to grow until it dies. And so I don't have to worry about the hibernation and oh my god, well, is my grass not going to accumulate biomass at somewhat of an optimal rate? I don't have to worry about any of that stuff, not in the spring. And so, and also in the spring, the weather conditions, with that in mind, I effectively get more opportunities to fertilize my grass in the spring, than I do in any other time of the year. For spring is the time that I get the most opportunity to effectively work on my field. And so I've taken a look at the soil conditions. I've taken a look at the fertilizer programs that I've been running on my field. I've been taking a look at everything, the weather conditions. And I've determined that I'm going to utilize a 10-2-6-1-1 NPK calcium sulfur ratio on my field, and I'm going to apply that at 30 pounds of nitrogen. So I'm going to use a 10-2-6-1-1 nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, sulfur ratio, and I'm going to put that on my field at a 30 pounds of nitrogen ratio. So I'm going to use 30 pounds of nitrogen. I'm going to use 2 pounds of phosphorus. I'm going to use I'm going to use 3 pounds of phosphorus. I'm going to use 18 pounds of potassium, and then I'm going to use 1 pound of calcium and sulfur as well. And so that's the big idea, when I go to the fertilizer co-op, and I can just take a look at the fertilizer sheet, and I can just tell them, give me half a ton of whatever potassium sulfate, a half a ton of urea, and then give me a half a ton of dolomite lime, and then they'll just mix it into a buggy for me, and I can just bring it over here, and then I can just put it on my field, and then I'm good to go, right? I mean, it's not complicated, as long as I understand what I'm looking to do. All right, and so I think that will keep my field growing for about at least 2 or 3 weeks, and then within 2 or 3 weeks, I believe that I could re-diagnose my field. I could take a look at my field again, determine what is going on with the biomass accumulation, determine what's going on with the mineral concentrations, and then I can re-diagnose my field, and then I can fertilize it again if necessary within about 2 or 3 weeks. And so, utilizing fertilizer in more frequency with lower dosage rates actually does a lot to keep your environment from being damaged. It does, your environment will benefit if you apply fertilizer at lower dosage rates but more frequency. And am I saying that you should dump fertilizer on your field all the time? No, you should not. That's not a good idea. When it comes to fertilizer, you really need to know what you're doing, because if you do not diagnose your field correctly, if you look at your field and you think, oh my god, well, I have a flat out nitrogen deficiency, but you don't even have a nitrogen deficiency, you have a sulfur deficiency. And in reality, if you utilize sulfur, your plants are also going to need more potassium, right? Because I've always said that fertilizer for plants, and if you really want to develop an understanding for this, of how all of this works, if you go right now and you go to Home Depot and you buy a big old block of potting soil, it'll cost you about $10, but maybe $15. Back in the day, they were $8 a piece. They were $7 a piece. Buy 3 blocks of big old potting soil, cocoa fiber, or peat moss. It's peat moss. At Home Depot, it's peat moss, but you can also if you have access to coconut husk, the blocks, cocoa husks, then you can use that too. It's the same thing. Buy this potting soil, and then buy yourself about 10 different types of fertilizer. One bag of fertilizer, it'll cost you about $5 to $10 a piece. So all of this combined will cost you about $150, and then utilize that potting soil to grow the plant, and then see what happens to the and then on a piece of paper or whatever, in your head or whatever, just come up with different fertilizer mixtures that you are going to use for each plant. Come up with a different one for each one, and then observe their growth. That was how I did it. If you observe the growth of the different plants, you will begin to realize what I'm talking about. There are some plants where it's like, oh, I gave it the same amount of nitrogen, but I changed the amount of potassium, or whatever it may be. You'll begin to understand. Oh, well, sometimes if you utilize the same fertilizer, but you diagnose the deficiency of that problem, and then you apply that fertilizer, it will actually create deficiencies in other fertilizers, because the overall metabolic activity of the plant has increased. So when you and the big idea of this whole thing is that you just need to understand that, you know, fertilizer for plants is like food for a human being. When you eat a steak, you're not eating just protein. You're eating fat, you're eating vitamins, you're eating it all at the same time. That's the most realistic way for me to put it. So when you utilize fertilizer, it's the same thing. If you increase the nitrogen, if you have a nitrogen deficiency in your plant and you utilize nitrogen to fix that deficiency, it will actually increase the overall metabolic activity of the plant. You will have to utilize other fertilizers as well to keep that plant growing at optimal biomass accumulation. Long story short, that is what's going to happen. And that's why I give you information like when you think about a grass, when you're looking at a grass, in terms of a generic formula for grass, what can you kind of just keep in mind as a rough estimate for what are the overall metabolic conditions of that grass? 513 NPK. That's a rough idea. I am giving you this information with the utmost sincerity. I am giving you the best information that I can. When you're talking about a grasses accumulate biomass differently than broadleaf plants. I talk about this all the time. If you're growing a field of grass and you want to diagnose your deficiency, you're actually probably better off walking across your field and looking for a broadleaf plant. Broadleaf plants accumulate biomass faster in larger amounts, so it's easier to diagnose a broadleaf plant, much easier to diagnose a broadleaf plant, but just understand that broadleaf plants accumulate minerals on a 5:1:7 or so ratio. That's the big idea. Are all plants like that? No, they're not all like that. It's just to give you a rough idea. It is just to give you a rough idea of what can you anticipate, what is some information that you can just kind of have in the back of your mind to keep an idea of what kind of fertilizer should I put on my grass. If you have a nitrogen deficiency, should you just put nitrogen on your grass? No, you should not. Probably not, unless you are doing that, you know, to effectively drain your soil of the other minerals so that when, you know, maybe in the spring, like, you know, I told you, like when I did it, there are times when I utilize just straight nitrogen on my field. And when I do that, I am effectively looking to deplete my field of phosphorus and potassium. That's why I'm doing it, so that in the spring, when I replow my fields, I can apply fertilizer, the phosphorus and potassium fertilizer. The phosphorus and potassium fertilizer are positively charged fertilizers, and they need to be physically displaced into the soil. So I am taking a look at my overall soil conditions, and I want to deplete my field of the phosphorus and potassium, and I can actually make that happen faster by causing a nitrogen imbalance. Am I going to dump a bunch of nitrogen on my field? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to utilize, you know, nitrate maybe at 25 pounds per acre until I see the phosphorus deficiency begin to happen. Phosphorus deficiencies are very easy to recognize. Why are they very easy to recognize? Because your plant will effectively start to turn like this bluish color, and then they will turn red. If you walk across your field and you see a bunch of like the plants are like starting to turn red, if you like, oh, the grass is kind of dark, I don't know why, but it's kind of dark, it's kind of like this dark blue color, then that field is having a phosphorus deficiency. Phosphorus is one of the easiest things to diagnose. It is one of the easiest deficiencies to diagnose. The plant will physically turn red, and then if it turns red, then you have a phosphorus deficiency. All right, actually, I never talked about it, but phosphorus is one of the easiest things to diagnose. Phosphorus deficiencies are one of the easiest things to diagnose. Your plant will legitimately turn red. If it turns red, there is a critical that is actually very bad. The plant is actually starting to not grow at all. It's actually completely stunted. It will not grow anymore unless you utilize fertilizer, unless you utilize phosphorus fertilizer. But if you apply fertilizer, you have to understand, and actually this is a very, you know, and maybe this will make it go full circle. If you utilize fertilizer, if you utilize phosphorus fertilizer on that field, you also need to understand that in terms of a broader sense of things, phosphorus is the least utilized by the plant. This is actually a very good idea of why you need to understand something like a 513 generic formula. Because if you utilize one, let's say that you look at a field and you diagnose that phosphorus deficiency, and you say, oh, this fertilizer, this plant is physically red. This plant is legitimately red. It's starting to turn red. That's a phosphorus deficiency. Very likelihood chance of a phosphorus deficiency. Is it 100% a phosphorus deficiency? No, but I mean, it probably is. All right, so you take a look at it and you say, okay, well, I need to put phosphorus on my field. But then you think about it and you say, oh, well, when I take a look at the overall generic information, phosphorus is the least utilized out of the three big nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So if you utilize phosphorus, there is a very realistic possibility that the uptake of nitrogen and potassium will also have to increase for that phosphorus to be metabolized by the plant. Very realistic possibility. If you put 1 pound of phosphorus, for every 1 pound of phosphorus that plant will consume, you can anticipate that plant will also consume 5, is a plant going to consume 5 pounds of nitrogen? No, it's not. For every 1 part of phosphorus that you anticipate that you need for that plant to grow properly, the plant will also need to utilize something like 5 parts of nitrogen and 3 parts of potassium at the same time for that phosphorus to actually work. That's a very realistic idea of what I'm talking about. You're going to have to understand that, the plants do not just take up minerals one at a time. If you wait, your grass is not magically going to grow. All right, if you're looking at a patch of dirt, it's going to effectively be a patch of dirt forever. Why? Because the animals are effectively pulling the minerals out of the ground. The plants are accumulating the minerals out of the ground, and the animals are accumulating it in their physical structure by eating the plant material. That's why. All right, so you're going to have to do something about it. And when you utilize fertilizer, you need to have an understanding of how those fertilizers work to utilize them properly. Because if you don't utilize them properly, it's not going to do anything. The fertilizer is not going to do anything, and then you're going to, right? And then congratulations, you're bankrupt. All right, I mean, it just is what it is. Okay, if you don't utilize the fertilizer properly, if you don't utilize fertilizer at all, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work to the degree where it's actually going to be, benefit your business. All right, I've been taking a look at what kind of fertilizer do I want to use on my grass? How much am I going to put on? When do I anticipate that I can utilize this fertilizer? I've been taking a look at these various things, right? And I've been taking a look at my financials and what do I want to do? And I actually want to do. I'm gonna start taking a look at more of the higher range properties. I'm gonna start looking at more of like the I may even do up to like somewhere around a $5 million deal. I'm looking for something like $5 million. And the reason that I'm gonna do that is because I figured that if I can, here's actually the thing. I've actually called around. I found a couple of $4 or $5 million ranches. I found a couple of them, and I've been calling around to them, and I've been talking to the agent that's representing the property. And the agent that's been representing the property on these big properties, that they all effectively say the same thing. If you can commercially finance half of it, then we will seller finance the other half. And so I was like, oh, well, and so I was like, that's fantastic. I mean, if they will seller finance half of it to me, if I just give them $2.5 million, they will finance the other $2.5 million for me, then I might as well do it, because the seller financing terms, I can negotiate the terms very easily. Right? Maybe you give me maybe you give me a 3-year lease on half of it, and then you give me a 12-year payoff, or whatever it may be. I can negotiate the contracts. I can negotiate the seller financing very easily. And here's the thing about these big properties. Like when you're looking at buying a $5 million piece of land, how many people, and think about it like this, how many people do you personally know? Like, write them down on a piece of paper. How many people do you personally know that can even do that? It's probably less than 5. In terms of like, here's the thing. Me personally, I do not know anybody other than me. Legitimately, honest to God, I do not know a single person that is looking to buy a $5 million piece of land other than me. I don't know anybody. Not a single person. I'm the only person that I know that is like, you know what, I am legitimately looking to buy myself a $5 million piece of land. I'm the only one. I don't know anybody else that's looking to do that. And so it's a very small list of people. There are not a bunch of people running around, oh my God, you know, if I go and I buy myself a $5 million piece of land and then I increase the size of my cattle business by 325%, then I can actually, you know, I can actually float the dead and produce myself a positive return. Very, 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 very few people. I actually don't know anybody other than me. I'm the only person that I know that is actually looking to do this. All right, so it's not a very long list of people. It's not like some extensive list of people. Oh my God, you know, I can find a buyer for a $5 million piece of land everywhere that I go. It's not gonna. That's not how it works. I don't know anybody looking to buy a $5 million piece of land other than me. I've taken a look at my situation. I can float $2.5 million, no problem. $2.5 million of real estate. I can pay for that already on my 10.5 acre piece of land. All right, I can already pay for that. I'm already making the money. And if the seller finances me the other half, then I can negotiate the terms. Right, I can make the numbers work for me. If they give me 3 years and give me, you know, and then they give me a 12-year payoff with very low interest, then I can do that, no problem. All right, you know, I can do that, no problem. So I'm actually looking for more of like a $5 million piece of land. All right, and you know, and okay, you know, and here's the thing about this whole thing. I'm not saying, you know, I'm not saying that I'm a saint. I'm not a saint. No, I don't really see anybody as a saint. If you legitimately think you're a saint, you're either very naive or you're very dumb. I don't know how else to put that. You're not a saint. Nobody's a saint unless you are a saint, right? I mean, then God knows it and you know it, and I'm very happy for you. You know, have fun being a saint. All right, you know, but, you know, at the end of the day, I legitimately, the thing about my situation is that, okay, you know, and yesterday I was talking about this, but walk a mile in my shoes. Imagine being in my situation. You know, when I was 32, I finally made it. You know, I made it maybe about 18 months ago. I finally made it. I don't have to worry about money anymore. I legitimately have zero money concerns. Money does not concern me at all. The big difference about me, and this is a very realistic way to put it, is that this business, it costs me about $1,500 a month to run, about $1,500. And me, the thing about my situation is that if you put everybody in a room right now and you said, everybody, here's $2,000. Here's $2,000. I would probably be the only person in that room that will legitimately think, now that I have $2,000, I can run a $5 million business. I would probably be the only one. I would be the only one. I can almost guarantee it. It would not be some massive number of people that are like, oh my God, now that I have $2,000, now I can go and run my $5 million business. I would probably be the only one. That's, you know, that is honest to God. This business cost me about $1,500 a month, maybe even less, and I produce, I don't. It's even difficult to determine exactly how much money I make, but it's a lot. I actually probably make over $250,000 a year. For $1,500 a month, I am making over $250,000 a year. All right, you know, and farming is not easy, and I've talked about this. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and show anybody how to do 10%. If I show you how to do 10%, you will be a 10%er forever. There's no, you know, if you want to, you know, get to the 10% mark by yourself and then work to doing better. You know, and at the end of the day, you know, if you really stick after it, and, you know, there's no reason why you cannot get to the 10% mark. There is no reason why you cannot make $2,000 a month. There's no reason. You're not so dumb that you can't make $2,000 a month. That's not, you know, if you're average, you can do it. You can more or less do 90% of this if you actually commit yourself to learning it. Because I've always said that there are when I take a look at it, there are two major categories for actually learning how to do this. If you actually want to learn how to do this, there are two major ways that you can do it. Right, you're either very, very committed, like you're legitimately in a situation where you are like, I'm going to abandon everything else for the next 15 years so that I can learn how to farm. There is that route. You could take that route. or you either started when you were very young, and effectively, but when you start when you're very young, it's different. Because why? Because you don't I mean, you're still at that, you can effectively learn how to do anything when you're very young. You can learn how to do anything. You can legitimately learn how to speak 5 languages and play 10 instruments by the time you're 10 if you felt like it. Your brain is still developing. You can still learn how to do anything. And then the most realistic way to teach like an infant is, or a child, is what? To turn it into a game. You turn it into a game. Right? You don't because the gravity of the situation is something that you don't really realize until you're older. You don't. Like, when you take a look at me, and you have to understand that a part of my life is that I run a multi-million-dollar business. That is a part of my life. I legitimately had to make it this far by myself. I don't know anybody that can even farm at the 10% rate. I don't know anybody that can even do 10%. And here's a very realistic way to put it. If you put me in a room with effectively everybody in the entire country, and you gave everybody $2,000, and you said, we're going to see what you do with this $2,000, I would be the only one that goes, oh, here is my chance to legitimately go and start myself a $5 million business. I would be the only one of very few people. And what's another way that you could realistically make, what's a realistic way that you can make another, $5 million by investing $2,000 a month? What's another realistic way? You can do that by buying the S&P 500. I said, poor people love the word guarantee, right? And I guarantee that if you buy $2,000 worth of the S&P 500 every month for the rest of your life, you will never worry about money again. I guarantee it. If you buy it, even when it goes down in whatever, if you buy it $2,000 a month for the rest of your life, you will never worry about it again. You too will also have a multi-million-dollar net worth, but there are a lot of obstacles. I mean, there's a very realistic possibility that whatever, right? Now that I have, $1 million worth of assets and they're appreciating at 10%, I'm just going to go and YOLO, and I'm going to go and get myself a Lamborghini because I have $2 million. Then congratulations, you failed. And this is also why I talk about you can't just give people money. Giving people money is like giving people a fish. It doesn't work. Eventually they will run out of fish, and if you don't teach them how to fish, then they are effectively going to run out of fish and then turn right back into a bum beggar forever. There is no, you can't give people fish. It doesn't work. You have to teach people to fish, and it's a very, and here's actually a very realistic way to put it. Imagine that, and this is actually something that a lot of rich people do with their children. A lot of very wealthy people will actually do this for their children. And if you actually go and you take a look at how do wealthy people raise their children, it's different. Because imagine that when you were a baby, imagine that when you were 5 years old, you're just now starting to kind of just understand things, right? Your brain is developing at a very rapid rate, and you're just now starting to understand things. Imagine what if you were sat down every week and your mama, put you in front of a stock portfolio, and she said, we're just going to play a little game today called buying stocks. We're just going to buy a stock, and it's just going to be a fun little game. And every week of your life, 52 weeks out of the year, every week of your life, you and your mother sat down in front of a computer, and you bought $100 worth of the S&P 500. That's all you did. And it's just a fun little game, right? And then as the child got older, you increased the difficulty, right? You increased the difficulty a little bit. By the time they were 10, you said, we're going to start investing $150 a month or $150 a week. And then by the time you're 15, you're actually going to have to start doing chores. You're actually going to have to start helping around, and you're going to have to start doing chores. But when you do chores, I will pay you by buying more of the S&P 500. That is what I will do. And that is how you were taught that from when you were a very, very, very young kid. You didn't, because you don't really, kids don't really, you can just do whatever you want. I mean, you can, if you tell them to, if you tell them to sit there with their mama, they're going to sit there with their mama, and they're going to be more than happy to do it. They're not going to go, oh my God, well, whatever, right? I mean, but imagine if that happened. By the time you were 25, you would already have, a borderline multi-million dollar stock portfolio, you would already understand how stocks work. Oh, I made a positive return on this since I was 5 years old. I understand how to buy stocks, right? I understand why you want to do it, right? My mama showed me this when I was 5 years old, right? And then congratulations, right? I mean, but I mean, at the end of the day, at that point, now it's like you have to learn to not be an idiot. Because even if you have the money, if you're an idiot, you will lose all of it. And then it's like you can start increasing the difficulty, right? Increasing the difficulty. If your stock portfolio, if your investment portfolio is making you a return of $20,000 a year, then if you go and, you know, whatever, you know, if your stock portfolio is making you a return on average of $100,000 a year by the time you're 25, you can go and spend 50. You can go and spend 50 and it won't matter. Your stock portfolio will still increase by $50,000 a year. And if you understand this, you will fundamentally never worry about money again, because your investments will effectively pay for borderline everything. There's nothing that you can really even buy after you make a certain amount of money. Then, you know, and it's like, you know, you can do the same thing with cattle. Imagine that when you were 5, you had a bunch of cattle, right? You had a bunch of cattle, and then one of the cattle, you put a little purple ear tag on it, and you said, this is your cow, this is your steer, you know, this is your animal. And so, you know, and you know, you're a little baby, you don't even understand what's really going on. You don't really even understand, but it's kind of a game, right? It's kind of cute and it's kind of funny. It's kind of a game. Here is your little animal, and when you sell that animal, you know, we're going to bring home the money. We're going to take a look at how much money the animal made. And then we're going to buy stuff like, it's just a little game, right? It's just a game. You don't put too many rules on it or anything. You just show it to them. This is your animal. And then you sell the animal, and then you say, oh, look, when we sold that animal, we actually made enough money to buy 2 animals. And so now you have 2 animals with purple ear tags, and those are now your animals, and now you're 6 years old. And you're like, oh, well, you know, and it's still a cute little game. It's still a cute little game. Oh, well, you know, you had 1 animal, now you have 2 animals. The animals with the purple ear tags are your animals. It's kind of cute, and it's kind of, you know, whatever, right? I mean, it's a game. It's not really that whatever. And then by the time you're 7, you sell your 2 animals, and then you buy whatever, 3 animals, you buy 4 animals, and now you have 4 animals with purple ear tags, and those are now your animals. By the time you're 8, you sell those 4 animals, and then you buy whatever, 7 animals. So now you have 7 animals that have purple ear tags, and now those are your animals. It's still kind of cute. It's still kind of a game. By the time you're 10, you're actually going to have to start paying for the feed yourself. You increase the difficulty just a little bit. You're going to have to start paying for the feed yourself. Right? You're going to have to start paying for the feed yourself. So now you sell whatever. You sell your 30 cattle. You buy feed. From the 30 cattle that you sold, you made enough money to buy 50, right? And then, you know, we're going to keep it at 50, and then the money, whatever, right? And then, you know, you're going to have to start buying your stocks yourself. So we're going to take some of your whatever, right? And then you can increase the difficulty just a little bit. And then by the time that person is, you know, 25, you can actually turn these people intentionally into I'm telling you that this is very possible. I'm not the one who discovered this. Laszlo Pogar was the one that discovered this. You can actually turn the average person into a genius. You can. Geniuses are not born, they are made. Laszlo Pogar, if you want to take a look at this, it's called the Laszlo Pogar experiment. Right, but if you're 25 already, and you have legitimately, all you have are a massive pile of problems, what I call in a situation where, like, even if you're 15, if you're 20, if you're 25, if all you have is a massive pile of BS and you have no money, then it's probably a death sentence. You are probably not ever going to be able to fix that under any circumstance. You probably can't. You probably can't. Unless you are very committed to the idea. Oh, well, and am I your buddy papa? No, I'm not your buddy papa. I don't care if you died. All right, I legitimately do not care if you died. Don't ask me for, if you want to do it, I sincerely hope you make it, and I hope you succeed. But chances are it's almost always a guaranteed death sentence. You are probably not going to be able to break out of it. You are probably stuck in an eternal loop of poorness forever. You probably are. And I know that that's sad. All right, I'm not saying this to be malicious. I'm not saying this to whatever. I'm saying that is sad. All right, but if you decided that you wanted to do it, you could do it. And one very realistic way to do this is if you bought $2,000 worth of the S&P 500 every week for the rest of your life, you would never worry about money again. Ever, forever. After about the 5th year, granted that you learn to also not be an idiot, you would never worry about money again. It is theoretically impossible for you to lose money, half of your money in the S&P 500 if you hold on to it forever. It is theoretically impossible. If it does happen, go to the bank and immediately borrow money, because money will be so cheap. You could borrow money at borderline 0% interest rates. All right, and if you're legitimately concerned about the stock going into half, you should actually be worried about it going the other way. If the stock market looks like half of it's gonna evaporate tomorrow, the central bank may legitimately take interest rates negative and print trillions of dollars, and that will cause a lot of inflation. All right, so but I mean, it just is what it is. But think about that. Like, imagine, like, it's like if you have a little 5-year-old and they're just starting to understand things, and you start teaching them things like you and your mama, your mama and you are gonna sit on a little phone, right? And we're gonna get on this app, and we're going to buy $500. We're gonna buy $100 worth of the S&P every week for 52 weeks out of the year, or for every week out of the year, we're just gonna buy $100 worth of the S&P. And then by the time you're 10, you're 5 years older, you're going to increase that to 150, and then you're actually going to be able to visibly see that, oh, this is how you make money with assets, right? I mean, this thing, it's produced a dividend, and et cetera, et cetera. You've actually made money, whatever, and then you're taking a look at it. And then by the time you're 15, you're actually going to have to do chores, and you're actually going to have to, you're actually going to have to earn that stock, and you increase the difficulty just a little bit. By the time you're 25, I mean, you would already understand, and you would already be a multimillionaire. If you started, if you were being taught these things when you were 5, by the time you were 25, you would already be a multimillionaire. Granted that you didn't develop some major problems and act like an idiot. But a lot of rich people do this. If you actually take a look at wealthy people, that is what they do with their children. I guarantee it, they do it. I guarantee it. They give them asset portfolios and let them hold on to those asset portfolios, because then they begin to understand how to make money, how to make drastic amounts of money. They do it. I guarantee it, they do it. Right? Wealthy people do this with their kids. I guarantee it. They will give them asset portfolios. The asset portfolios are making a positive return. You can spend a certain amount on that by whatever, right? I mean, they're going to get a lawyer, and they're going to say, give the child, and you're going to be able to spend a certain amount of the positive returns, but that's it. And then they give them these asset portfolios, and then the child gets to watch as the asset portfolio goes up in value, or whatever else it may be, produces a positive return. They get to see it happen, and once they understand how it fundamentally works, and they don't act like an idiot, they effectively now you have somebody who is effectively, you'll never worry about money again. But after a certain point, it's too late for a majority of people, and that is very sad. But wealthy people do that with their children. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. That's how you actually make money. You collect good assets, and you hold on to those assets forever. And if you do that, you're good to go. Effectively, from now until infinity, you're good to go. You'll never worry about money again. I don't worry about money. Money does not concern me at all. All right, but but that's a very realistic way to do it. I mean, if you legitimately want to put yourself in a situation where you don't have to really, go into learn something that is borderline impossible to learn. Like, my whole situation is that I may be one of two people. There may not even be two people on the entire planet. I may legitimately be the only one. It's like, if you put me in a room with, and then you said, I'll give you $2,000, and and that $2,000 would now be enough money for me to go and make $5 million. I would probably be one of the very few. Warren Buffett might be able to do it too. And I've talked about this, but I think Warren Buffett could do it too. If you gave Warren Buffett, $2,000, if you gave Warren Buffett $2,000 a month, if Warren Buffett had $2,000 a month, he could more or less turn that into $5 million, no problem as well. He could probably do it too. All right, you know, I'm not the only person that can actually do it. I may be the only person that can actually do it as a cattle farmer. I may be the only person that can do it as a cattle farmer. I'll put it like that. Warren Buffett could probably do it too. Fundamentally, he understands, you know, more or less the same thing. If you gave Warren Buffett $2,000 a month, he could turn that into $5 million, no problem as well. I'm probably the only person on the entire planet that could do it as a cattle farmer. All right, you know, I'm probably the only one. I may be one of. It's not some extensive list of people across the entire planet. It might be 2 or 3 people. But I can almost guarantee it's not some extensive. Oh my God, you know, there are hundreds of people that can turn $2,000 a month into a $5 million cattle business. It's not a lot of people. I'm one of the very few. I actually personally do not know anybody that can even do 10%. I don't know anybody that can even do 10%. All right, it just is what it is. Money talks. I don't know what to tell you. It just is what it is. All right, and you know, that's it for me today, YouTube. Y'all have a good one.